you're only an athlete on the field for maybe 2 hours, and then I'll give you 30 minutes that you're in the gym. Let's say an hour. So 3 hours, you're actually being an athlete. The other part of it is still part of your athletic career here. The recovery, the nutrition, the sleep, all of that is important to build up for the next thing. Because if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter what we did in the gym or on the field, because it's not going to make an adaptation.
Christi, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Erica. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to see you again. And I know we had met a few weeks ago at the NSCA conference, and I was really grateful that we ran into each other. And after I had presented, you said something to me that was just so nice and very supportive and encouraging. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I would say Twitter probably brought us together, because when you were presenting, I was like, "Oh, I've seen that name before. Oh, that book before. Wait, is this her? It is." Okay, so I have to walk up and say something now. So I had seen your book on Twitter, and I was like, "Wait, I did not know you were going to be at this conference." Now I was a late Addie, so that's my fault for not knowing. But yeah, I was like, I have to go say something now.
Yeah, it was so awesome to run into you because whenever I go to NSCA events, I always just expect it's a bunch of male strength coaches, guys who work in football or baseball strength and conditioning. So I wasn't expecting to even run into any soccer people, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be held in Orlando, and I'm not working on that day, like that's an easy drive for me to join that. So,
Yeah.
we ended up having a game on the Friday night, so I got home late, but then the conference was on Saturday, so it was an easy, late ad attendee.
Well, so glad you went and so thankful for the kind words after the presentation. And just a quick thing, I don't know if I told you this when we talked, but when before I went on stage, I actually overheard a guy trash talking my presentation before he even heard it. Did I tell you about that?
No, you didn't.
Oh, dude.
For the presentation? Just on title.
Just by the title, because so I was just getting lunch. I was just getting my Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets, and I always get nervous before I go on. So I was like really nervous. And then I overhear this guy, and he's trash talking the presentation. He's like, "I can't believe this next speaker thinks that training around the cycle is a scam. It's not a scam." And then I was like, all right, I'm going to go over to this guy and introduce myself. So I went over to him and I was like, "Hi, I'm Erica. I'm the next presenter on the menstrual cycle." And he's just floored that I'm there and I heard this. And he was like, "Oh, well, I can't wait to see what you have to say. You heard the first speaker earlier. She has an opposing view to you. I'm really curious what you have to say in rebuttal to that." Like almost wanting me to like fail. It was the weirdest interaction I had. Like
Yeah, and I think what's so interesting about that is like the confrontation then shuts it down. And now like we're real people, like we can have an honest conversation and debate. And then I think what's also interesting too, like from your presentation and the one he's talking about earlier, I picked up phenomenal things from both of you guys.
yeah.
So like just have an open mind.
Yeah, I agree. And it was really interesting because it was like he was like pitting me against the first presenter. And I actually agreed with her on a lot of things, even though there were a few differences. But it's like we're all adults here, we're all professionals. We don't have to trash talk. We can have conversations, we can think critically. And the menstrual cycle is one of those topics that we have to really think critically about and be careful with what we're recommending to people. And I'm glad you and I had our discussion because we were kind of exchanging stories about just the practical application of it. And it just, it just doesn't make sense right now for training around it with the athletes you work with I work with. So yeah, that was my interaction before I went on, which
Man, I'm
was
so
a little
sorry.
nuts.
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. And I think it's not fair too. Like there needs to be some grace and understanding. There's different environments that we all work in. So the first conversation was a lot more tactical, and there are things that you can learn from that. And the second conversation was more athletics and youth athletics or professional sports. Like there just needs to be a little more grace and understanding that we all work in different environments, and you might not understand the environment that person's coming from.
Yeah, exactly. It's so crazy. Yeah, conferences are always interesting. You always like meet some interesting people. So, but
Yeah.
it was fun. I really liked the presentation at the very end of the day. I felt bad a lot of people had left, but the guy who was speaking on nutrition, his presentation was really great. I really enjoyed that one a lot.
Yeah, I felt bad. I was one of those people that left, but I got home at like 1 a.m. from the
Yeah.
game the night before, and I was like, I'm gonna fall asleep. Like
Yeah.
this is not gonna
It
go
was
well.
such a long day. Yeah, and it always sucks to go last. I've definitely been like a 4 p.m. presenter before, and I get it. And it's just like, that sucks
Yeah,
for him.
sorry.
But yeah, it was a fun day and I got to meet you. And then I was like, I need to have her on the podcast because you and I were talking a lot about how I work in youth, you work with the pros. And there's some similarities in the sense that we are mastering the basics.
Yep.
And I think my audience gets maybe annoyed that I keep saying basics, basics, basics because it's not sexy. But I really want to bring you on to just shed light on the pro side of it and why the basics are still the focus with a lot of these strength and conditioning programs. So maybe just give a background on who you're working with today and just sort of your training philosophy.
Yeah, so I'm working at the Orlando Pride. This is going into my sixth season now. Just finished number five. But yeah, basics are it, even at the pro level. And I think in the NWSL we are opening up and getting these younger athletes who've maybe foregone college, where they might have gotten a nice 4 year program before NIL, right? A nice 4 year program and build, and they were coming to me in a really good spot. But now we are signing players internationally that might not have gotten that college program, or signing players right out of high school. Or before high school, right? That haven't gotten those basics yet, and foundation of strength conditioning, and so I have had to go back and simplify some things in the gym, just out of our space, out of our environment, but then also just remember a lot of the good strength conditioning coaches you won't see on Instagram. You won't see their programs because they're not sexy. They're just basics, and you're going to grind out a back squat or a hip thrust for 16 weeks, and that's like progressive overload. And so yeah, I my philosophy at the core of it, you're going to jump, we're going to push, we're going to pull, upper body, lower body. We're going to get the sport specific hamstring, adductor, like whatever the major groups are, muscle groups are that we need to for that sport, and then do it fast, do it slow, right? So maybe you need some isometrics, maybe we need to calm some tendons down, or maybe you're moving and grooving fine, and we can do things fast and explosive and aggressive. So keep it simple. You don't need all of these wobble boards and all this stuff. Like, we play on the ground, so let's learn to produce force through the ground.
Yeah. I love that comment you made about how the best coaches aren't always showing their programs or everything they're doing every single day on Instagram. And that's why I always have to have people like you on to platform and have these longer conversations of the nuances of what you're doing with each individual. And you're looking at the athlete in front of you and designing a program for them. I love that you touched on just these young girls who are going right into the pros and how they have to kind of start from square one. So when they come to you on week one, are you doing some sort of assessment or intake? What are you looking at, and then what do you do after? Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Freelap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Freelap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Freelap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
Yeah, so all of our players that come in do go through our testing protocol, and then we've had some success with our PTs to look at, some squat patterns, some single leg squat patterns. They really like the single leg squat, and then we've had this last year we had access to a Dari motion capture to, in their squat pattern, are they knee dominant, hip dominant, whatever. So that was kind of cool information. It came to us late, but just in the gym, like, you can just coach his eye, right? Just give them a goblet squat, see how they squat, and you can see that in their activation, or whatever term you want to call that morning gym session. You can just gauge how they move, and as your coach's eye, your subjective opinion, you can start to um, make some assessment off of that, even if it's not an objective number or it's coming from a human track, right? They're this percent hip dominant. It can just be coach's eye, and that's okay. I think we need to get back to allowing coaches to have a little subjective in that art of coaching, right? And it's okay, like this is just my opinion, but I think we need to take a step back, or maybe I'm seeing you shift a little bit. Let's work on some more single leg exercises. So yeah, I think that intake and that coach's eye can be just as important as any number that you might see. Especially that first couple weeks as you're just learning their personality of what they're like in the gym and how they move and how they like to work in the gym.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. It's nice not to over tech your athletes, especially on week 1 and have all this like data and biomechanics. I think if you're a good coach and you've been doing this for a while, you can see, oh, she's collapsing during this squat. Oh, her knees are wobbling this way. I mean, you can tell with just your eyes. So when you see athletes have sort of these like imbalances, you're starting everyone maybe on a different type of exercise. So maybe like some girls might be doing a goblet squat or a split squat instead. Is that kind of how it's working?
Yeah, and I have to be careful with the gym that I'm in, so I have to make sure that it makes sense for the flow of the gym and not mess up. But yeah, the easiest ones for me, I have 3 racks, right? So if I am in a squat pattern and I want our group to be in a squat pattern, and I'm like, this person is just young, I just need them to load. Maybe they are just regressed to a goblet squat and we're working through that, or they've moved up to the barbell and we're at least in the rack with the barbell. So yeah, we're still double leg squatting. We're still just getting a general strength foundation. I might have some other athletes who have a compensatory pattern, whether the PT has picked that up in their biomechanics eye, that's maybe a little sharper than mine, or something we've picked up from our testing or coach's eye. And I might want them to do a little single leg stuff. So maybe it's I like the B stance or the kickstand core squat, right? And then we can start to load off of that front leg without having balance be an issue, or so we can still get some heavy work in. So that's an example of how in the flow of my gym with the 3 rack setup, everybody's still on the barbell, but this person's in a kickstand while the person who's coming right behind them is in a bilateral stance.
Gotcha. Now, as far as any other strength exercises that are staples in your program, again, for the people listening, it's going to be very different for every athlete. But Christy, if you can just give us kind of a spectrum of what else you're using for upper body, hamstrings, deceleration, those types of things.
Yeah, so I'm redesigning our gym program a little bit next year and just kind of how that will flow. So a little sneak peek, if you will. So our A block is going to be just a heavy bilateral, maybe that kickstand. I like to start with a box squat in the beginning in preseason, and I know that brings a lot of soreness, but I can get some good gains off of that. But I'm okay with them being sore in preseason. I'll typically go to some sort of trap bar for a little stint right before kind of the summer area, where I'll sit in a hip thrust pattern for a long time. I've seen a lot of good stuff with hip thrust and sprinting. You can get really heavy with the hip thrust and get some good gains with that without getting too much soreness. We still have games on the weekend, right? So I'll do a hip thrust in that A block eventually, and then I'll finish out the season in a trap bar or a kickstand trap bar. If I want a little if somebody needs more single leg work, they might be in a kickstand. And I'll play with that trap bar too. We might start to work on speed at the end of the season, and we're almost jumping, but not really, right? We're just picking it up off the floor very, very aggressively. In terms of A block is also paired with an upper body. I love the beginning of the season, just push-ups and pull-ups. There's nothing fancy, sexy about it, but just push-ups and pull-ups. And everybody loves to see, can I add a chain to my push-up or pull-up? Like that gets competitive in the gym. B block is where I get my sport specific stuff. So I'll have the hamstring. We'll start with Nordics. We'll finish with RDLs. So we make sure we get a rounded hamstring program where we have knee dominant and hip dominant. And then our adductor, I've done it different ways for the adductor. We kind of go with what we feel the group is feeling and is what we're doing working. So we kind of had this theory where isometric and then into eccentric loading up the mountain, right? So it was at the time Copenhagen into some sort of lateral lunge into a Cossack squat, and then we came back down the mountain towards the end of the season. There was a time where that worked, and then there was another season where a bunch of adductor stuff was flaring up, so we went back to isometric, and that cleared everything up. So don't really have answers onto what was happening at the time. So we've just tried to figure out a way to, can we incorporate that lengthening while keeping that isometric somewhere else in the program? Because something about that Copenhagen isometric with our group helps prevent some of those irritations later on. And again, that will be paired with whatever the opposite is of that push or pull. The other place that I'll clean up some upper body stuff is like a match day -2 lift, right? So that if that's my match day -4 lift, part of it, match day -2, I'll do the opposite of the upper body. So if I did a vertical pull, I'll make sure I get a horizontal pull on the match day -2. If I did a horizontal push, then I'll make sure I get a vertical push on the match day -2, just to make sure we get both movement patterns. Going back to the -4, the C block. So if we've gone through A and B, the C block will be kind of a collaboration with our medical team, and or if they don't have anything specific from the medical team, that rehab that you might call, right, that needs to be programmed and done on that weekly basis, they might be just a bucket that they fall in from testing. And hey, we see some deficiencies from your testing, and we're going to just give you a little bit of accessory work here, and we're just going to clean that up a little bit. So everybody's C block is kind of individualized, or at least bucketed, whereas like A and B are probably a team group lift, if that makes sense. So that's kind of our idea for next year. Still incorporating that VBT, and that's been very helpful for us in the gym.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome. And again, it sounds very simple and
Yeah.
straightforward. And yeah, I can't repeat enough. Simple always wins, especially for the parents listening. If you have a youth athlete, please do simple and be consistent with it. And like Chrissy mentioned, progressive overload. You're going to be doing the same exercises for several weeks in a training cycle so that your athlete can slowly add more weight to what they're doing. So you can't be random and all over the place. Now for in season, so you're doing two lifts in season pretty consistently. Is that the cadence?
Yeah, so one is a strength lower body, upper body lift. Match day -4 is our preference. And then we have a power upper body on match day -2. So yes, two lifts, but with a little bit of a different focus. But that keeps both of the lifts less than 30 minutes. So we're not in the gym for 60 minutes after they've already come off the field for 2 hours. Like that just becomes too long.
Yeah, that's really good. Now, as far as in season, like speed, plyometrics, deceleration work, what day would that fall on? How often are you doing it?
So I like to get a lot of jumping in on -2, not a lot of soreness. So I'll clean up. Maybe it's some box jumps, maybe it's some hurdle hops. I like to make sure we get some of that there. And then the other place that I haven't mentioned is that activation time, right? Activation is a very soccer term, but it can also be a miniature gym session before you go out onto the field. And so if there's a movement pattern that to keep my lift under 30 minutes because of the small gym size that I have, if I don't have that in my gym program once a week for 3 to 4 sets, right, I can add it to my activation in the morning. You get one set 4 times a week. We still get the same volume in theory, right? So maybe again, I've missed a movement pattern. Maybe I've missed some sort of frontal plane or transverse plane, and I can get that in the activation. So they're still seeing it throughout the week in terms of load. But that's a great time. I can get 15 exercises, you can get 15 to 20 minutes because you can hit those pretty quickly and just move on. And those can be isometrics, or you can load them, right? There's no fear to load something in the morning, and that's okay. We're getting ready to go out to training, so we need to get moving a little bit.
Now, as far as buy-in, I know you've been in the soccer space for a while, and a lot of other strength coaches be like, "Oh, soccer is so hard to get into the weight room." Do you think that's changing, or how have you worked around that?
It's different. I think culturally it's different. We've come from a weightlifting background, and then the Zambians that we've had come in, they love to be in the gym. So there hasn't been an issue with them. So I think it's cultural, and then just personality as well. Thankfully, the group that I have, everybody likes to be in the gym, and there's within that they like to load. There'll be some that are on the heavy side and some that are like, I just want to be moderate. And that's okay. Like as long as we can progress that in some capacity. But yeah, with my group, they like to be in the gym, they like to work. So I don't really struggle to get the buy-in or the why behind it because they've already got that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. It always helps to have a group that's already pre-bought in. So, you also talked a lot about velocity-based training when we met at the convention, and I'm curious, how has that helped with just getting the girls like really excited about the gym and their progress? We just started incorporating it for our high school girls who have a higher training age and who have a good strength base. So, can you explain what VBT is and then how it helps with that excitement around training?
Yeah, so velocity-based training, I'm still learning and still figuring it out. I think I have the basics, which is enough to get us started going in the gym, but it helps us drive intent on an understanding that we are going off of the average speed that the bar is moving, not the weight that's on the bar. So traditionally, strength conditioning coaches would program off percentage of one rep maximum, right? Um, Doing a one rep max test can be pretty dangerous if an athlete is not ready for that, if they don't have a high training age. So if you don't have that percentage to go off of and program, then what are you telling them to put on the bar? So now we've learned that there are correlations between the speed that the bar is moving and the percentage of weight on the bar that you might be after. So now we can have a targeted stimulus for that tissue of a certain percentage. So again, it just transfers my thinking that it's not about the weight on the bar, it's about the speed on the bar. And especially for the female athletes that I've worked with, that's been very helpful to get out of that stereotype of not wanting to lift heavy, right? In previous years, that's been a thing. Oh, I only put 10s on the bar, or I only put 25s. I was like, well, why? Like, why is that where you start? And it's like, actually, I think you can lift more. You're moving this really well. And other than me telling them that they were moving it well, I didn't have any other basis that they would believe me. So that's when we started going down this VBT route, and we found a company that worked for us in our environment, and they started watching the iPad and understanding like, oh, that's green, that's good, and that's where we want to be. I can add more. Or, oh, that was red, I was moving it too fast, I need to add more weight onto that. So yeah, the speed of the bar dictates kind of what percentage you're at, and it just helps guide them in the gym. The other thing that's really cool about that is if I do a one reps max test today and I go do it again tomorrow, I'm going to have soreness and fatigue and central nervous like fatigue. My one rep max is not going to be the same tomorrow. So it helps and allows some variability within the season of like, oh, I'm fatigued this week and the iPad, I'm not able to lift what I was lifting last week or whatever. Cool, then take some weight off and let's stay within that speed and we still get the stimulus that we want. And that's been super helpful. Or what will allow, hey, you're not feeling it, you might be fatigued, your fire alarm went off, or maybe you are in your menstrual cycle and for whatever reason you're just not feeling it that week, you're just a little down. It might be menstrual cycle, it might be on-field fatigue, it might be your fire alarm. Take the weight off, we're okay, just move it with quality and move it with intent.
Oh, I love that a lot. And just that instant feedback is so good if they're doing quality, fast reps. And I love that you talk about just how they get excited about that. And then another piece to all this is the translation to improving speed on the field, too, which I know a lot of soccer players get excited about. So, yes, there's a place for like heavy, slow lifting, but eventually you should be lifting weights fast. Are there any numbers like on the iPad you're trying to have them aim for with the VBT, or what are
Yeah, it depends on the lift, I would say. So if I'm throwing a med ball, right, I'm looking for peak velocity, and I can tell them to be aggressive. I can tell them to knock the wall down. But if they see like, oh, I threw it 8 meters per second with a med ball against the wall, and this time I threw it 9, we threw it with a little more intent that time, didn't we? Or if we are in a strength movement, we're looking for zero point 0.6, right, meters per second, zero point 0.7, somewhere between zero point 0.5 and zero point 0.7, and you kind of slide the scale, right? Is where I like to sit. That zero point 0.5 is what people will say is probably close to your one rep max, and then you're just getting a little bit your 98, your 95s, your 93s from there. But you can slide the scale all the way from mean velocity, which is what we're really after when we're doing strength movements, and then our peak velocity when we're doing some power movements.
yeah. And are you using it mainly for like hex bar deadlifts and like weighted squats?
Yeah, right now in our environment, we just use it on our main strength block, so that A
Okay.
block, right?
Yeah.
There are times where as I feel comfortable and the group is comfortable, we'll go from, okay, once we're finished in A block in the rack with the box squat, for instance, and we're going over to the RDL, I want you to take the iPad and the VBT because ours just hooks onto the bar, and I want you to take it and hook it over to that barbell. So once the team learns the setup, then I feel comfortable with them going from A block to B block. But I just start simple. Just pick that one exercise in A block. That's the main strength movement for me anyway. So let's make sure that that is hitting the zone that we want to, the tissue that we want to. And then we'll just go back to, okay, well, what do you feel like for B block until we feel comfortable moving from A to B, A to B.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. Now, for the sports parents listening, they might have a girl soccer player in middle school or high school. What's some advice you would give to the parents with like strength training, performance, anything you feel they need to hear?
For girls in particular, I think youth girls can get in the gym. I think that is an underreached group when we talk about ACLs and stuff like that. Low hanging fruit is just quality strength training, and I think that there are a lot of girls that don't get quality strength training until college. And I unfortunately, it's just not thought about for girls or women yet. That it is important. We're playing these sports at high forces, high speeds, and we haven't developed just base foundations yet, and that can happen in the gym. And again, it's not sexy. It's not sexy all the time. It's just and it's not meathead, it's not bodybuilder stuff, but it's still quality movement. And I think that's really important to make sure we are well rounded and getting that general prep phase for what sport you might be going into.
Yeah. You hear that, guys? It's not sexy.
It's not.
It's nothing wild. It's just the basics. It's very simple. You just have to be consistent. And like Christy mentioned, like getting girls in young. I always say if you're in middle school, like 11 or 12, if she's ready to go, great age to start. We did an episode on when to start strength training. I'll link that below. And I'm trying to come up with a name for this episode. And I feel if I had put in the episode, oh, Orlando Pride, pro strength coach, everyone like clicks on it.
Yeah.
And then when they listen to the conversation, they're like, "Oh, it's just simple." But
Yeah.
like people are going to expect, "Oh, they're doing some crazy stuff."
No.
It's so insane. Like I just don't understand why people think, the pros are doing like the most wild things.
And I think, like you talked about, that consistency is what gets it. And like again, one of the things that we talk about around the building is the 24-hour athlete. So you're only an athlete on the field for maybe 2 hours, and then I'll give you 30 minutes that you're in the gym. Let's say an hour. So 3 hours you're actually being an athlete. The other part of it is still part of your athletic career here, the recovery, the nutrition, the sleep, all of that is important to build up for the next thing. Because if you don't get that right, it doesn't matter what we did in the gym or on the field because it's not going to make an adaptation. So you don't have the fuel, you don't have the building blocks, you didn't get the right sleep and the right rest because it's not about what we did, it's about recovery from it to build an adaptation on the tissue to then go again the next day.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought this up because this is a big issue in the youth space, especially. There are girls who won't adapt well to strength training programs or they don't get benefit from speed training programs because they're doing stuff 7 days a week
Yeah.
and they have no recovery. And then the parent blames it
Yeah.
on the strength coach. But then when you dig a little bit more, you find out, oh, she has no rest days. Her muscles and nervous system have no time to come all the way down to really benefit from the training. So you're right. It truly is about what these kids do behind closed doors when they're at home. How are they sleeping? How are they eating? How are they planning their schedule for the week with their trainings and off days? It's so important. Otherwise, a strength training program is not going to really move the needle to the best it can.
Yeah. We another analogy that we've used before is if you're baking a cake, I'm not a baker at all, but if you're baking a cake, right, you have your main ingredients, which I hope are flour, eggs, baking powder, baking soda, I don't know, whatever. But you have your main ingredients, right? Your icing and your sprinkles, right? That gets last. That doesn't make the cake. It's the main ingredients, the main base that makes the cake, and then your sprinkles can be your fancy plyometrics or your supplements that you might take, right? But your sleep, nutrition, your rest, that's what actually makes the difference. And you spend more time in your day doing that than you actually do training your sport or strength training.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy. I'm going to quote you on that
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, this has been brilliant. I'm going to link Christie's links in the caption below. Feel free to give her a follow on social media and just follow the Orlando Pride. They got big plans for next year, which is really exciting. Had a good season this year, but I think next year you guys are ready to level up even more. So we wish you the best. And Christy, thanks for joining today.